Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for showing up. There's so many interesting things to see here at South by Southwest. I'm always grateful to get a little bit of time here, but importantly, to have people paying attention. So we're doing a little bit of a pivot today. I mean, as you heard my background, I've spent a lot of time in startups. And as we were pulling this talk together, we realized, like, look, we got to look at the whole industry and kind of bring you what I think hopefully are some interesting perspectives. I'm fortunate enough to be at Paramount, working across all of our technology, all of our productions, all of our operations. So I've got some interesting insights, some of which I can share with you. A lot of them I probably can't. But I wanted to just share what's out there, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, as it relates to AI and how we are working with the creative community to infuse that in how they work. And really, I guess it's not even infusing, it's more observing how they work and trying to support that as a company. I was here last year and I gave a talk that was a vision for the modern media company. And it was really about the same topic. So what I'm going to do this year is kind of reference back to that and sort of say, well, what have I seen in the last year that's interesting, that's really working? A lot of things that aren't quite working yet. I can cut to the chase. No one's creating a movie out of a single prompt going into a text-to-video tool. That's not happening anytime soon. So if you're here to see that, I'm sorry. I will show you what I think are some really interesting videos that have just come out in the last couple weeks at the end that I think represent state-of-the-art in terms of AI video generation and sort of where that could go and how we're working across the industry to do that. So being at Paramount, I have to show you the mountain. It's very important. This was a sizzle reel that had a lot of our content on it that we actually decided not to put up there because it's moving so quickly. Like the business is moving so quickly. Like every time I do a sizzle reel, we've got a hot new show that's coming out. So I encourage you, if you love Paramount, go to Paramount Plus, look at our hot new shows. But I'm not going to burn time running through a sizzle reel today. I want to get straight to like how we're looking at this as a company at the very highest level. And our vision has stayed the same. This is pretty much what I showed last year, that we're going to leverage this AI opportunity to transform our content creation powerhouse in partnership with a broader creative community. And you can imagine, maybe, how many versions of the word opportunity were on there. Disruption, explosion, and people would go to the fear end of the spectrum or the optimism end of the spectrum, generally depending on how informed they were about what AI could really do. So a big part of what I'm doing within Paramount right now is education, like spending a lot of time getting the tools into the hands of our creative community, into the hands of executives, so they can truly understand where this can help. And I'm not just up there prognosticating about what could happen in the future. We're actually empowering people to get their hands on keyboard. Just 1 second. So the one thing I normally start with when I'm talking about where AI is today is to kind of remind people where we've come from. We've had some form of machine learning inside of not just Paramount, but in the industry for a very long time. And a lot of people now are claiming, I was doing AI back in the 80s when it wasn't cool. I'm not going to say that, even though it's true. Kind of. But I will look back to the mid-2000s, and there was this movie, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And it was a breakthrough in visual effects at the time because of the very realistic facial expressions that we got out of the performance with obviously Brad Pitt playing in that role. But it was a breakthrough because at that point there just wasn't enough compute available to map the polygons to the face. Like right now we see these massive data centers are being built for AI. We were compute constrained at that point in the industry. So we had to come up with some innovative techniques, and we used a bit of machine learning. It's not large-scale neural networks like we're using today, but it was machine learning to kind of identify how to map that visual effect onto the face. And it was a bit disruptive at the time. And I'll roll this video real quick for those that haven't seen this. It's sort of how the original performance from Brad converts into the visual effects performance.
Only on the outside.
So you can see there the polygons over the a face getting mapped in. So today it's not that breakthrough when you look at it, but at the time it was very hard to recreate that fidelity of a performance, and it caused a lot of concern. So what does it mean? Is Brad really doing the acting, or is this modifying his performance in some way? And now we don't even think about it because the level of visual effects that overlay performances is pretty standard. But I point this out because there's a lot of the similar type of concerns that we're hearing around the application of AI. Even in doing some level of voice correction, there was a recent upheaval about just modifying an accent in a performance and whether that was going too far, which I look at that and say, look at the level of visual effects we have with traditional techniques that are deterministic. Because this is a probabilistic system, the fear comes in, right? And a lot of it's because of the hype that's gone around this. The last big wave of AI was, and I jumped on this one too, because as a startup guy, I'm always too early. But back in 2017, Jeff Dean at Google, and it's not just Jeff, all of Google, made the last real big disruption in AI. And the breakthrough at that point was translation. Like everybody was having a hard time taking translation to the next level, particularly real-time translation. And they were using traditional techniques and optimizing them. And Google went in and applied neural networks, AI techniques, machine learning techniques, and really broke through and introduced new technologies like PyTorch. They broke through a computational barrier. They used a new system that enabled these models to scale to trillions of parameters, which now we're hearing, and there are trillion parameter models in the market. Before that, it was billions, if that, and it was really hard, again, to get the compute to do all of that. So that was a really big breakthrough, and I was at Hearst at the time. So if you don't know, Hearst is a private company. It's a conglomerate of about 45 businesses, and we've got information businesses in finance, media, healthcare. And at this time, I'm running around, it's the end of the world. I've seen it. The machines can now see the information for companies that were financial service companies that generate text. That's their primary product. They're going to be taken down if we don't jump on this now. So I assembled all 45 of our CEOs. I brought in the AI leaders from Google, Microsoft, Amazon, which were all leading the way with their cloud offerings at the time, and did a big education. It was a great event. But I wasn't wrong. I was a little early, right? So what we saw, like it didn't happen in 2018 or 2019, but that built momentum to obviously what we saw happen in 2022. So my point is, this is a wave, it's an important wave, but everything's not gonna happen in 2025. But you should be paying attention. And those people at Hearst, and I've tracked them, that paid attention then, are actually really well positioned and have taken advantage of it and built relationships, built technology teams that know how to leverage this. So pay attention, but don't panic, I think is the key to this. And part of the panic comes out of this hype cycle that we're in now. In 2022, the diffusion model started coming on. We were all playing around with Midjourney. I had a lot of my tech friends coming to me and saying, wow, you really got to pay attention to this, and I did. And then, as we all know, as that was getting more interesting, November of 2022 came, ChatGPT exploded on the market, and I started really digging into this and actually lost several weekends in December of 2022 writing white papers, writing presentations, kind of like I did at Hearst, to raise awareness. Like, the machines can see our images, and they can, ultimately they'll see the video. They weren't quite there yet. What we do as a media company is we create images and video. They're gonna start creating content, so we need to understand this. So I was really doing a lot of evangelism inside the company, outside of the company, and it even got to the point, and this was early 2023, where I made the Wall Street Journal, right? Because there's just so much unknown about this. And this article was just basically saying we should be paying attention and we should be really thoughtful about what's happening with AI, not just as a media company, but as an industry. There's a lot of intellectual property implications to what's going on here. We need to engage with the technology companies that are building this. So not only we understand what they're doing, we can influence and make sure they're aware of the implications of the technology that they're deploying. This was part of that hype cycle I was just showing you. And we all know what happened in 2024. Really, it was the year that video, which I'm going to talk about more, came on the scene in a more serious way. As we were in 2023, it was Will Smith eating spaghetti. It was kind of silly, you know, and there were fun videos. But when Sora was released by OpenAI in February of last year, that really broke things open. And in fact, it just happened before I was on here talking about it. But what got everyone excited really ultimately wasn't that exciting. So they took systems that could generate 5 to 8 second video clips that were of moderate quality, not really a lot of consistency, and did really weird things. And they created a video that was about 30 seconds, much higher quality, and had more coherence over the arc of that. So we got from a really kind of not great clip generator to a much better clip generator, but not something that you would stitch together and do the sort of video creation that we as a full-scale media company do. So the reality of 2025 is a lot less exciting. It's not a robot sitting in a director's chair, which is probably never going to happen, hopefully. It's really more the working phase of AI. And we've seen this in other cycles. And a lot of people, including myself, if you were around, try and line up this wave of AI with the beginning of the internet and say, are we like 1998 right now? Is this 1999? Is the bubble about to burst? It's a pretty generally useful parallel to think about. But if you think about that wave, the first period of that time in the late 90s generated a lot of momentum, but companies like Google were formed after that first wave. Obviously, companies like Meta were formed after that wave. So we've got a long runway here to get into the working phase. The challenge that AI is facing in the media industry right now is it's got this kind of triple curse. It's very complex. Even the people that are close to it don't truly have an intuition for how these machines operate. So that is where we get fear into the conversation. It's still experimental. I mean, we're still figuring things out. Like, you know, we've got so much time and attention at OpenAI and Google and other companies that, you know, we've got innovative companies like DeepSeek that come in and change the paradigm and shift that. And I'm hoping that happens more in video. I don't think that even the large-scale, state-of-the-art foundation models now for video are going to be sufficient. They're just not architected to create video in the way that we're going to need to create the quality videos that we do. So that experimental nature means that we've got these emergent properties. That can be scary, right? This thing does something I didn't expect it to do. I think it's pretty cool and exciting, but that can turn into fear as well. And it's a great story. Obviously, there's been enough sci-fi around AI over the last century to fuel into that. And what is happening in the industry, and I think it's something we need to overcome, is a desire to kind of limit the conversation. The reality is if you grow up in, as I did, in academic science, or you grow up in a technology startup ecosystem, it's all about the community. It's all about having a conversation that's thoughtful, but really vibing off of one another, to take a new AI term with vibe coding, and really building, you know, new ideas together. And I never would have started my startup companies if I was not embedded in the Silicon Valley tech ecosystem at the time. I wouldn't have had the courage to do it. I wouldn't have the support system, but also a lot of the key ideas on how to build, you know, early stage internet companies, or certainly streaming TV, only resulted from the fact that I was involved in these broader conversations. Fortunately, in the midst of all of the hype and Wild West that's going on, that we do have really strong voices on the positive side of AI. James Cameron joined the board of Stability, and he's been a strong voice seeing the opportunity as a technology pioneer. And I think it's important to focus on James Cameron for a minute. In the media industry, the big innovations generally don't happen by some tech platform company building something. The big innovations is by somebody being obsessed with the story and then pushing the technology forward to bring that story to life. And that is the story of James Cameron. If you haven't read his biography, I highly recommend it. As a tech person, I found it really inspiring. Ben Affleck, incredibly articulate. If you go out, he's probably on YouTube. Incredibly articulate and informed about what this can and can't do and where he sees opportunity, and others. So I just think, you know, there's a mix of voices, and that's kind of informs how I talk about it and work with it. But in the midst of all that hype, I mean, the reality is a lot less sexy. This is, excuse me, this is a project called Greenlight 2030 that an industry group, Movie Labs, has put together. And Movie Labs is a consortium of Hollywood studios. Sorry, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold, so I have a little bit of a cough that kicks up. Hollywood studios, tech companies, but they're building productions. So this diagram, is not there just to show you a complicated diagram. All little green elements are areas where we're saying, hey, where could AI potentially assist what's going on in the production process, all the way from drafting and revising those scripts through to post-production and ultimately delivery. I'll try and move away from the mic if I cough. So not all that exciting, but really important. And this is an ecosystem that we as studios have built up to drive these conversations. But getting to like where we see things working now, there's a couple of areas today that we see things working. And I'm going to get to the video production side of things, because that's not quite there yet. But it's getting really interesting. So we're on the edge of it. But the areas where we see great opportunity today, and people are using these across the industry, is in developing ideas, creating some of the content, and marketing. So on the ideation side, it starts with, well, what idea should I get behind? We're in a world now where it's very noisy. We have a lot of content flowing out to many distribution channels. It's hard to get the attention of our audiences. So we have to really look early on, before we're even going through and modifying or processing a story, figure out how is this playing in the zeitgeist of what's out there right now. So we have predictive analytics that we've been using for quite some time to look at what we're seeing on our streaming services, what we're seeing out on social media, to inform the creative community and what stories we think will resonate at that moment in time. So that worldview is something that is very important, and it's not something you get out of an AI system on the generative side. It's something that can inform decision making on the predictive side. So we're using machine learning models to actually ingest large volumes of content that we're seeing across our ecosystem of marketing and touch points with consumers. So this trait analysis is looking at the traits of that content and feeding it in. We also do, and are seeing in the industry, a lot of work around scripts. So text to video is basically our business, which is kind of funny if you think about it. I mean, that's what we do as a company. Take these stories that are processed and manipulated in a text form for a long time, and then turn those into video. So that text phase is really important. So we've gone and looked at the industry and tools that are processing these scripts, and they're not going to tell you whether this is a great story that's going to be a winning story in the market. They're going to give you the facts around that. And we actually have a tool that we've seen that can look and read a script and actually estimate how much it would cost to make that, which is pretty fascinating. It's going to look at how many scenes there are in that story, what type of shoots you would need for that, and build up an estimate. This would normally be a pretty laborious process that would happen later in the analysis phase, and we can do that now with these tools. So that text part of media production is super important. But where we've seen a lot of benefit is just looking into our library. As a large-scale media company, we've got tens of millions of assets. 20 million video and audio assets, 14 million photo stills. And this is what's made the screen, and also B-roll, which as we get into a world of AI models, that B-roll is going to be increasingly important. But looking into that and figuring out, well, what can we access? What can we potentially license? What can we use in downstream productions is very hard to do. So we've gone in and used AI tools to look across almost all of those assets that we can get to, and do what are called vector embeddings, which is basically processing them so an AI system can understand them. So we're not just looking at metadata and saying, give me everything that this actor's in, or give me everything that falls into this genre. We can say, give me everything that has a fire scene in the woods. Show me everything where somebody's riding a motorcycle on the beach, and we can look across all of that inventory and pull it up. So it's incredibly powerful now on the creative side to find things. And in fact, that Benjamin Button excerpt I did used the AI system to look into our archive, find those assets, and produce that clip. So our archive team did that using AI to create that asset. So this is where I'm seeing a lot of people that are excited about this, that are day-to-day people working with these systems. So rather than me just say they're excited, I'm going to show you a clip that some of our editors put together because they just thought this was so amazing. So I'll let them tell the story of how this helps them and their quality of life every day.
Are you tired of long hours sifting through clips just to find that one key element that will tie your whole cut together? Well, tire no more. Introducing the Secret Formula, your new smart search tool. The cut for today will be a SpongeBob compilation. The theme, every time someone says secret formula. James will be using the traditional method of sifting through multiple scripts and checking each individual episode. Meanwhile, Robert has the secret formula in his toolbox. James is already in a flurry as he pulls up the script PDF of every episode. He's able to search for formula and already getting highlights. He's already pulling up his first episode and looking for the exact moment.
One down.
Using the secret formula method, Robert brings up Thornburg, selects SpongeBob and types in formula. And within seconds, every clip where the phrase secret formula is marked and logged with in and out points. He is now exporting these clip markers and converting into an EDL, dragging the EDL into Premiere, and there's already a timeline of clips.
What? Oh yeah.
Robert's next step is to relink all these clips in the timeline. Let's check up on James's side of things.
All right, that's one episode.
Oh, and one thing to keep in mind, James is actually really fast at this.
That is correct.
There's a lot of scripts to get through. Stop it.
Meanwhile, Robert has all of his clips relinked and is putting the finishing touches on his cut.
Now, truth be told, you still need a human touch on your cut, but I'm already at that stage. How about you, dude?
James is still hard at work and already has a couple of episodes in.
Done.
What?
Oh, I'll see you.
And just like that, Robert is already headed out to enjoy his weekend. Let's check on the final numbers. James, working as fast as he could, was able to produce a 2.5-minute cut featuring half the series in roughly an hour. A truly valiant effort. But with the secret formula method, Robert was able to produce an 8.5-minute cut covering the entire series in a little over 10 minutes. The secret formula, making clip compilations efficient, manageable, and fun. The secret formula is not meant to replace editors. It is a special tool to cut down on work time on clip searches, allowing editors to focus on the flow of their edit and maintain a healthy backlog.
So funny. I just love that. I show that every place I possibly can. And that was not, I did not ask them to do that. That was totally done by them because they saw the power of this and they're trying to encourage their colleagues to take advantage of this so they can do more of the work that they want to do instead of the more laborious work. It's a theme you'll hear over and over again. The other area that we're seeing good success is obviously on our streaming services. Now that we can understand the content in a new way, we can connect that content with consumers in a much better way. So we're now applying these techniques of having embeddings of our content, understanding them in different ways to try and connect them through our recommendation system. So obviously we have Paramount Plus. I think we've got on there, watch on Paramount Plus. That's my plug if you can't see it. Please go check it out. But like every media company has a large-scale streaming service, understanding the content, organizing that, connecting it with consumers is the main job. That is the only job in many ways of these services, drive engagement. What's really interesting that a lot of people have been talking about is will we start generating personalized versions of shows? Nobody that I'm talking to is really talking about that in a serious way, but I know that's been thrown out there. But I would say that a personalized navigation to get you to content that you're interested in is definitely happening today, and it's quite powerful. So the other area that we've seen a lot of progress is marketing. We're using it to generate large volumes of content. The reason marketing works today with current AI systems is because generally production of content for marketing is generating a large volume of content that's derivative from existing content. So taking an existing video asset and saying, cut it down to this time frame, or pull out elements of that to conform to this different narrative that I'm trying to create. There's tools today that are very effective. So as you can see there on the left side, we've got an example where we had a written article. We wanted to convert that to video, and we were able to at least create elements of that and then have an editor pull it together. And in this early stage of pre-visualization where you've got an idea, but you can't see it, you're just writing about it, being able to turn that idea into something you can see, whether it's an image or a video, is working very well. So this early stage of marketing and creating assets is working really well. One thing we've done on the consumer side recently was with the film we have Imaginary Friends. And with Imaginary Friends was about monsters that were living in the minds of children. If you haven't seen it, it's a really fun, touching movie. But we wanted, through the marketing, to have consumers create their own imaginary friend. So through the use of AI, we enabled consumers to sketch out an idea of what one of their imaginary friends would be, and then we would generate that friend for them, and they could take it with them. So it's really, to that point I made earlier around personalized content, that's kind of what's going on here. You have an interaction from a consumer drawing out something they're interested in, and us, through the use of AI, generate something that's on brand, embedded in the context of the film that we have, and driving a deeper consumer engagement. So we're pretty excited about that one. This other one that I'm going to show you was really interesting because it brought together different elements and solved the problem. So we were putting Gladiator 2 into the market. This was September of last year, the beginning of the NFL season. So we wanted the NFL, Pepsi, and Gladiator 2 all to come together in an arena. The challenge is the NFL players actually had to play games, so we were not going to get them on a stage or in the arena at that moment. And we wanted to do this very quickly. So we did, when I say we, the agency that worked on this, put together AI elements to solve some of those problems, and I'll roll a clip and you can see it. One was some of the visuals going into the Coliseum. The other was getting the NFL players embedded into that. So we used some level of face embedding, not unlike what Benjamin Button, but using the latest technology to do that. So it's a really interesting use of this to solve a real-world marketing problem. So I'll roll the beginning of this clip here. So you can see the faces there as we put them on the screen. The background was generated to some extent. I'm not sure where the traditional visual effects and the AI effects start and stop on that. But you can see on there, the faces. So it's a good use of the technology to really, get something at scale. And this was a big release. So I think another element is generally the market was confident that we could put this out at this scale using this technology. So now I'm going to segue to the heart of the matter, actually making video. And what I want to do is take you through what I'm seeing, some of the challenges with the current state of the art, and as I said, just run you through some examples of what I think is representative of what's interesting right now. So this diagram has been around for a couple of years. So all of us, I'm going to take credit. I think I'm the first one that put this version of a diagram together, and everybody else stole it. It's like inventing the internet, I guess, right? But everybody just went through and said, AI's here. I'm going to look at every element of what it takes to create a video and see where AI is going to impact it or where it's going to disrupt it and come up with use cases. So it was this period that everyone went through, and a lot of big consulting companies made a ton of money on, of use case harvesting. And it wasn't specific to media. It was every industry looking at how they operate and apply AI to it. But what's happened over the last couple of years is many of these areas, as I described, particularly on the pre-production side, have actually come to life, and it worked. I talked about the opportunity for script analysis and supporting that writing process, the pre-visualization. That center section in production is where things are still evolving. And in post-production, we've already talked about aging, de-aging. I'll talk a bit about color correction in the context of virtual sets. But you can see, the actual work of people making video is lighting up some of these areas with AI and making this very real. The dubbing side of things, that technology just works. It's not widely used across the industry because there are a lot of rights issues associated with that. But that will evolve over time as well. So I am optimistic that what we laid out as a roadmap of different areas this might impact, we're seeing it come together. Again, it didn't happen in 2023. We're now in 2025, and we're just seeing this progress. So it's more of a 3 to 5 year journey across these areas than it is a sort of 1 to 2 year. A few examples. Let me see if I missed anything. Yeah, QC and image upscaling, really interesting. It's being used. Live sports. When we want to do things like slow motion and do frame interpolation, there's some opportunities that are emerging in the industry around that now. And I've really covered everything else. I'm actually pretty good on this. So the challenge. It's still very early, and to create video that has a story arc that's consistent and coherent is still a challenge for these AI systems. And many people are talking about this. This isn't a Phil Wiser thing. But the ability to control what is coming out when you generate the video. Like, you want a character to look like the same character from scene to scene and frame to frame. That is not a trivial thing to do in these systems. For people that have used them, sometimes you'll go in and change a few words in a prompt and get something completely different. So that controllability is really important. And as I mentioned, continuity, you want the feel of the scene, the style of the scene to stay consistent. You want, obviously, as I mentioned, characters and visual effects to be consistent, and you want to be able to control it. These are very hard problems. And as I mentioned, I don't believe the current, even the large-scale foundation models support this. There are, in the people that are working on this at production level, really innovative techniques. One of them is a small model called a LoRa. If you're in AI and video, everybody says LoRa, LoRa, LoRa. But a LoRa is a very small, relative to the big models, AI model that can capture something and represent it like a character. Like, I want this character to look like this, or I want this style to be like this. And people are using these LoRas to capture something that needs to be consistent. And what's interesting about the LoRas is they take, and we'll just say a character. I'll just use myself so I don't infringe any intellectual property. So I've got a character, Phil, and I want to put Phil in these different scenes. Right now, I could feed an image of Phil into the large foundation model and say, create a scene, but make sure Phil looks like this. That's really inefficient. What these LoRas do, they actually ingest and interpret what Phil looks like in the language of AI. And they feed the representation of Phil in kind of an AI to AI conversation, little AI model of Phil talking to big foundation model, let's say Sora or VO2 or something like that. They can't do it yet, so I'm here pitching them to do it. It's really more stability and other models that enable this. But that kind of control, where you've got other AI systems orchestrated and talking to bigger AI systems to get the right output for you, that's where all the magic's happening right now. And I think that's where I'm seeing producers really make a lot of progress. So I'm hoping that this control opportunity continues to go up. The other area that there's a limit, and you've seen it if you've looked at any even high quality videos that are live action representing humans, the humans are still a bit lifeless. There's still something in that uncanny valley that even with the higher fidelity renderings of humans that's missing. So I think that will, as all visual effects continue to improve, but it's not quite there yet. And it's not being captured, even throwing more data at the existing architectures. And I think that's kind of a fallacy that people are falling into because they're seeing OpenAI just jam more and more data into larger models and get results. Even they're seeing the limit of that now with reasoning models taken over from like the 4Os and others that are built on the traditional technique of 2 years ago. I think the video systems are going to have to be fundamentally re-architected to take into account creating these kind of world models that generate and overcome these issues. And where I saw a bit of this recently, I went to an event hosted by the Hollywood Professional Association. And it's really a bunch of Hollywood nerds getting together and really spending time locked away talking about these topics. And to me, it was a representative of the community that we need across the media industry, having thoughtful, deep, and technical conversations around the problems I'm talking about, and getting away from the headlines, getting away from the noise, and really getting down to the business of making video using the latest technology. And they put forward as well, you need to embrace these technological advancements, you need to engage with the market, we need to foster collaboration across the industry and with the tech industry. There's still a very much Silicon Valley, Hollywood gap that it's pretty amazing when you talk to, and coming out of Silicon Valley, talking to some of the companies, they just don't have that intuition for what it means to create video or audio or music the way we do. So I'm hoping that that conversation improves. And then we need to deal with the IP issues and the bias issues in the models to make sure that we're representing the world in the way that it should be, and we're not infringing on other people's intellectual property. So I'm going to show you a few examples here that I think are pretty interesting. So this next one is actually just dropped last week. This is a music video from Wu-Tang Clan. Their company Secret Level Studios. put this out, and I'm just playing it off YouTube because I'm just pulling this stuff together as I see it, and it's kind of interesting. So we might get an ad or two. I'm sorry, I'm going to try and avoid that. But what's interesting about this, and I want to tie back to what I described, the innovation here is that these characters, Mandingo, are consistent as you go from scene to scene. Like he looks a little bit different sometimes, but generally speaking, it's a consistent character. The style of the scenes are consistent. And it still has the limitations of AI-generated live video. It looks slightly animated, but I think it is representative of kind of the state-of-the-art of that control and steerability. So I'm going to roll this for you. I knew it. This is not the video. There we go.
The Mandingo style takes a strong back and total breath control. If properly mastered, one's skin becomes impervious to swords, spears, and fire, even bullets. Ultimately, one becomes invincible.
I like to see if you can match my deadly Shaolin technique. Like this. Right. Chef sharpens blade. Score strength.
So what's interesting is capturing that rain effect, as you move from each of these frames. These are completely independently generated videos. So having that coherence of the style of the night, the rain effect, and then obviously the characters are quite consistent. So I know I hate talking over the music. It's a good song. You should check it out. But it's I think representative of people that are using the current large foundation models and then putting control on top of it to generate something that's coherent. So again, that's out on YouTube. Go check it out. The next clip I want to show you is representative of animation. So we know the challenges with live action, generating it still looks kind of animated. We've got the uncanny valley. So a lot of people are looking at animation and saying, look, there's a real opportunity here today to build out new techniques for animation. I think this next one, this one is actually from Secret Level Studios as well. It's kind of a montage of different animation techniques, which I found to be really interesting, and I'll talk over it a little bit. So here, more of a somewhat photorealistic animation technique. And the key here is to look at the different styles and the quality that we're getting at it. Like this is more of a hand-drawn type of 2D animation effect, but really consistent. You're not getting any of that AI blur effects on there. And then these, I think, are pretty remarkable examples of AI-generated animation as well. Crisp, good fidelity. But the key is you're moving from style to style. So it's a really nice palette of styles and techniques that are already working at this quality level today. So I think there's a lot of optimism, particularly with practitioners that are operating at this state of the art to generate animations that are really, really interesting.
Face anything head on. You were always there to catch me, no matter how far I fell. You taught me to dream without limits, to reach for the stars. You made me brave enough to face anything. You helped me become who I am today. And even in the stillness, you made the world come alive.
It's really great. So I recommend looking at that as well. But the key thing there is just the quality and the crispness of the animations and how, if you didn't know that, you would not necessarily know it's AI generated. And for those of us that look at a lot of AI video, you kind of can spot it. That has some stylistic consistence. This next video was just shared with me by Eric Weaver. He's at the Entertainment Technology Center at University of Southern California. He shared it with me last week. I'm like, can I show it? Can I show it? Because this is the latest work they've done on high-quality 3D animation. And ETC is another industry group, works across the studio and technology ecosystem to push the state of the art. Again, I know I'm repeating myself. They do it by producing stories. Just like James Cameron does. So they've got this story, Chica Boom. They've been working on this for a while, but a key part of this was getting this 3D animation technology to the point where it was, Pixar level quality. So this is, the latest out of the labs from ETC, showing Chica here doing a little bit of dancing. There's no audio on this. But you can see the physics are right. You'll see some of the lighting in her glasses and other things that they've got in there. I may have missed over that. I'm going to go back and play it again. Let's see if I can do that. So there's still some artifacts in there that you can see, but it's pretty remarkable that this is AI generated, using a lot of those techniques I talked about with control, steerability, and others. So really state of the art right now. It's pretty good. It's better than, as I said, Will Smith, having spaghetti shooting out of his head, or people with 5 fingers on each hand. Really coming a long way. And this is over the course of just really the last year that a lot of these innovations have happened. So I want to touch on, so let me get out of this. One other topic that I found really fascinating and talked about a bit last year, the holodeck. So the holodeck is, from Star Trek, if you watch Star Trek, is this environment you can walk into, you speak to this room, basically, and it converts your environment into whatever you want it to be. So you can change your scene and your environment just through talking to the environment. With virtual sets, which are these large LED displays that you can, as you see in this image here, one of the bigger ones, you fully encapsulate the actors and the physical set inside of this LED volume, and you can change where they're residing. And it's really powerful, but it's also been a bit laborious. You have to use rendering engines to generate those visuals. There's a lot of constraints on the fidelity to make sure that it looks good when you're shooting that in the context of the actor. But the hypothesis that not just myself, other people have been talking about a year or more ago was like, hey, if we can apply AI to the images that show up on that volume, it's going to be able to generate those images faster. We can try new ideas faster, theoretically. So people have been working on that. And the dream would be you could talk to that scene and say, you know what, I don't want to be in that ice cave. I'd rather you put the actors on a moon crater, and it would just change the environment, and you keep shooting. So things get much more real time. I think that idea of things getting much more real time is where a lot of the magic's going to start happening in our industry. So one example, again, it's out of ETC. They were doing a short film called Europa, and they were really trying to push the boundaries of these virtual sets and using AI to make things a bit more real time. So I'll play a little excerpt of that so you can get a sense of these virtual sets and how they're working.
In our film, the lead character, there's 3 astronauts, and the lead character, she is on this mission, this very capitalist mission, to extract water from Europa, a real place, which is one of the
This is within the virtual set, so try and spot where the LED stops and, like there, where's the screen start and stop? It's hard to tell. That's the point. And I'll just show a little bit more of behind the scenes look of this.
So Europa is the 3rd virtual production show.
And you can see there the screen in the back, and how that's working. But I want you to listen to this insight that one of the producers had now that they have the ability to see the final product, near final product in almost real time.
To know that it's scientifically accurate. Does it in 20 minutes.
It is part of that idea of swapping things where we're things that we typically think of in post, we think of it in pre-production. Essentially, our director was coming up with creative ideas on the day based on the fact that the color was very much closer to what you would expect on final pixel. So with that, she was able to make creative decisions you probably would not have been able to make on the day if you did not have a lookup table that will correct some of the off-balance colors that we were seeing.
So the key point there, I've repeated, is the director could change the way they were working on the near final product in real time. And that idea of like taking that long process of, as you saw on the screen, pre-production, development, production, post-production, depending on how much visual effects and animation you do, post-production could take months or years to get to the final product. Now, if you can see what that's going to turn out, what your vision looks like in that moment, you can adapt. And that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity in the industry. Let me just get out of this video. And what I'm going to be keeping an eye on a bit more is this concept of agile video development. And we saw that for those of us that grew up in software engineering. When I was doing my first company just a few years ago or a few decades ago, we had to do everything in a waterfall fashion. So we did a lot of planning up front. We had a lot of, well, a small number of engineers, depending on the stage of the company, but a lot of software engineers would go into a build phase. So they take the plan, implement the plan, then you look at it in an alpha or beta phase, do quality refinement, and release it. And you have this very linear cycle that would last in software development 6 to 9 months, depending on the size of the product. And what we saw in software development has been really productive is now continuous integration, continuous release of features. You can see the final application or product in near real time, and that changes what you actually build. And with these technologies and the ability to see things early in pre-visualization, to see things like I just showed you on a virtual set, seeing what it's going to look like, and maybe on the day of, as that producer said, shifting direction is going to move the creative process in a different direction that I think is very exciting. Because the biggest challenge for a lot of creators, whether you're writing a song or you're producing a film, getting that vision and that idea out of your head and onto the screen or on the speaker, that friction, that's the hard part. And anything we can do to reduce the time and the friction to bring that vision and that dream to life for a creator is going to be a good thing. And that's where we're investing a lot of our time and energy now. And I feel like if that's all we do is get that vision, bring it to life faster and cheaper, and make more ideas visible, then that's good enough. So that's kind of my hope for where AI is going to go. And we'll keep an eye on it over the next year. But that's a quick journey to AI. And we'll go to questions. If you haven't submitted any, please do it now. But we'll convert over to questions now. Thank you. Oh, here we go. So the first question, for future graduates in filming, what skill sets will you be looking for that will be differentiating? Look, I think for future graduates, you need to understand these tools now. But you need the basics. Like you can't take a shortcut and say, I'm only going to go to AI tools and not understand the fundamentals of filmmaking. It's just not going to work. But if you immerse yourself in the creative side of the business and filmmaking and know then and can be a bridge to applying these new tools to that, that'll be key. But go hands on keyboard now. It's like anything I talk about with AI in the company. Use the tools, try and use them every day, develop an intuition for how they work. We're all making it up as we go along. So nobody has a playbook. This didn't exist a few years ago. How AI-powered solutions will change the platforms we are consuming the content in the future. I think that I talked about, this is basically a question of will AI change, for example, how video is showing up in the consumer marketplace. I think it will through recommendations, but I do think there's some non-zero chance that, say, we've got an episodic series, and we're getting real-time feedback using that feedback that I mentioned early on with predictive. You can evolve that storyline in real time based on what you're seeing in the consumption. It's something that creatives do on YouTube and other platforms every day. That's going to move more and more into the more traditional formats. So I do think it's going to evolve into higher quality, longer length videos over time. There's a lot of questions I'm not going to answer on here. That's why I'm taking a while reading it. You can imagine what they are. Yeah, just keep going, man. I'm not talking about that. Here's one. Are you guys preparing yourselves for quantum computing? If yes, where and how would it be used? Absolutely not. I'm not doing anything with quantum computing. I think it's super interesting. But for the time frame that we're working in over the next 5+ years, it's not really going to have an impact. I'm hoping that it will, because I think it will take down the cost and dramatically reduce power consumption that we're seeing is insane right now with these AI data centers. But for what I'm doing day to day and applying this technology to our business, not so much. It's one here, how do you deal with the ethical side of AI? There's a couple things we do. One is in our CBS News division, we actually formed a group that reviews all of the inbound video that we may be getting from other sources and tries to detect whether any of that's AI generated and could potentially be misinformation. So we've got a group called CBS News Confirmed that is actively doing that on the news gathering side. So we're not replicating what could be AI generated misinformation. The other element of that is we're very thoughtful. Like one thing that I did back in 2023 was form a task force with the general counsel of Paramount to make sure that we were looking at all stakeholders in our ecosystem and being very thoughtful about how we were advancing this, but also making sure that we're not being too aggressive in areas that potentially could have some downside, not just for our business, but for our creators. So I think the ethics comes down to the people. You have to run your business the way we've always run it and be very thoughtful about things like the creatives and the intellectual property. So I think that's good. I think I'll just wrap it there because there's just so many questions I can't talk to. It's kind of silly. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.